Second day of owning my own business, I'm in my house and, I look over at a dining room table. It's covered in papers of me trying to create these paper invoices. And I look down on my feet. I just remember so clearly. I look down on my feet and I'm wearing Adidas slides, standing in, like my dining room. I'm like, I'm about to go broke. I'm going to end up being homeless. Like, this is crazy. Like, wait a minute. What am I supposed to be doing right now? I should be out running calls right now. And I don't even know how to generate a call.
Super excited about my guest today, Jason Henderson. I kind of call him a two-time business underdog. He not only started at the bottom, like many of us do, and really built up through the kind of the trades. One off, started his first, HVAC company, which was incredibly successful. Sold it, and then he started his second company in the garage space and building out not a franchise, but really a partnership across the country. He plans to have 25 locations within the first, really 18 to 24 months of starting. It's really incredible. What I like so much about what Jason has done is he's disciplined. As he said, he's not organized by nature, but he's created an organization for himself, both from a personal, professional standpoint, has philanthropy as a big part of it as well, and just really has so much expertise and learnings to share with the audience. And we're going to discuss execution-focused leadership, how important urgency is, and really how culture can outperform conventional business strategies. And Jason is a testament to someone who's done it successfully. So sit back, listen, and enjoy. Jason, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me, Eric. I appreciate it.
Well, yeah, you have a really cool story. We hear this a lot, but you don't always get kind of the background of even, how you even got into, even though you started at the bottom, like why even you went into being a technician in the HVAC space. How did that even start?
Yeah, I was working in restaurants, doing really basic jobs, cleaning dishes, working in the backs of kitchens, bussing tables, stuff like that. And so I kind of wanted more of a real career. So, I'd heard about the trades, but the way that I got into it, I didn't go to trade school or anything like that. There was like a no experience duct cleaning position available. So I was like, let me go give this a try. So it's kind of just random and just kind of worked out.
And while you were there, over the years, you kind of built yourself up. You got more responsibility. Assume, had kept your head down and just got, doing good work and gained more kind of, credibility and trust with your bosses. Kind of, I will ask for advice at the end, but a lot of people, especially again, I don't want to sound like we're, as old as we are, but a lot of young people want that immediate success, right? They want to be like, they want in there. I'm sure you have it with people you work with. What advice did you give, almost tell yourself back then, the things you did to get the credibility to build up through that organization?
For me, it was just a matter of working hard, doing all I could. I guess just like business ownership, just implementing everything that I learned. There wasn't YouTube back then. And, the company that I worked for, they didn't provide any sales training, communication training, or anything like that. So I did a lot of experimenting with it. It was a straight commission job. So, if you can't sell, you can't make money. And there were no sales courses. So it was really just a matter of, for me, it was a matter of just being myself and just being a good person and being there to serve clients and things like that. And, of course you build on that and you learn from that. And, that's really all I did. So like for younger people, it doesn't happen overnight. I guess for some people maybe out there, like 1 in a billion, it happens overnight. But I mean, unless you're going to be that 1 out of 1 billion, you just get in there and learn
Exactly.
about everything. I started from the bottom and just worked my way all the way up through every single position. And so I have an understanding of what it takes to work in a home services business.
That's also the 10-year or the 15-year overnight success story, right? But people don't want to hear about the time when nobody cared. They want to know when you sold your company successfully. So you're working at this company, you made a lot of progress, you built up trust and goodwill, and then ultimately you decided to leave and start your own company. What was that turning point? What motivated you to start that first company?
Well, the company that I worked for, I worked for a couple of different companies, but the one that I worked the longest, I was there for, I guess, 13, 14 years. And they didn't have benefits. They didn't really take care of team members. As I mentioned, they didn't have sales training, communication training, anything at all. We paid a lot of our own expenses. I did actually go to two trainings towards the end, and I paid for those. The owner, everybody's going to say something about an owner that owned the company before, but It was a matter of, I wanted to have a business that was different, and I thought that I could do that. And so it led me into starting my own business.
Were you nervous to take that step? Leaving kind of something stable and doing your own thing, or were you pretty confident at that point in time?
I think I should have been nervous. I was maybe a little arrogant about it. I thought, I had a lot of good experience at that point. I had managed, pretty much every department from installers, AC technicians, plumbers, office staff, telemarketers. I had managed all of them and effectively managed them, but I had management experience without any management training. And so I thought that I was prepared to be a business owner. But the reality was I was really good at sales, communication, and dealing with a client, but I knew nothing about business ownership. And so I had some maybe arrogance on my side. I wasn't wearing it like arrogance, but I was confident. I was overly confident, and, it wasn't reality.
So what were some of those, wake-up calls that you got when you went on your own and were like, "Holy shit, this is
So
I've
like the
I've nowhere
second
else to
day,
look, this is on me now," right?
yeah, the second day, I was a workaholic technician. I worked every single day. I was on call forever, and just working and grinding it out and helping people. Second day of owning my own business, I'm in my house and, I look over at a dining room table. It's covered in papers of me trying to create these paper invoices. And I look down on my feet. I just remember so clearly. I look down on my feet and I'm wearing Adidas slides, standing in, like my dining room. I'm like, I'm about to go broke. I'm going to end up being homeless. Like, this is crazy. Like, wait a minute. What am I supposed to be doing right now? I should be out running calls right now. And I don't even know how to generate a call.
It's interesting. Isn't that it's so interesting as you go from even from technician to manager, then ultimately owner, you're so used to being a doer that you weren't trained to be the thinker. And so when you're not doing, you feel like you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing because you're not in the field, you're not cranking and what you needed ultimately was what you probably ultimately did was realize, no, this is my role. This is what I have to do. I just have to do it better. So going from oh shit, I may go bankrupt to build an incredible successful business. What was that transition? What did you have to learn to make that a reality?
So we started our business August of 2017, and there was a business conference called Service World Expo that was in Las Vegas, September of 2017. And when I started my business, I started with a very small amount of money, but I actually hired team almost right away. I wanted to build a certain type of business, and so one of my team members, I said, "Hey, let's look at all of these different organizations. Let's try to learn a little bit about what we're trying to do." And Service World Expo came into town. I thought, okay, let's go do this and go check it out. And so I sat in their Service Nation Alliance. I sat in their sort of pitch for why you should join Service Nation Alliance. And I was already determined to join some organization in the spring, just to get some idea of what I needed to do. There was this guy, David Heimer, who was really great
Sure. He
at,
was awesome.
yeah, he's amazing. And you had this speech of, did you open a business so that you could be sleepless at night, so you could worry about paying for your mortgage and taking care of your kids, or did you want to be away from your kids? But he said even more than that, and it just kind of resonated with me. Like, you know what? I really don't know what I'm doing right now. If I can get in front of customers, I'm fine. And we were making money because if I got in front of customers, we were just fine. But I wasn't getting in front of enough customers, and I wanted to have a real business and not just a new job.
Yeah.
And so I called my wife up and I was like, hey, I'm thinking about joining this group. And she said, I thought you wanted to join in the spring. I said, you know what, we might not be in business in the spring. If I don't make a shift right now, this is 1 month in, right? If I don't make this shift
Wow.
right now and start to learn something about what I need to be doing, then who knows? We might not make it. So went ahead and did that. And it was an amazing experience because the one thing that I found was no one was necessarily holding my hand and say, do this and do this and do this. But I had at least access to people to network with that were already, good business owners. They had already been around for a while. And I found out what my superpower was in that sort of time, like the 6 months after joining, was I started to hear concepts of people doing certain things. And I like to challenge concepts and do things, not just for the sake of being different, but really challenge it to whether or not is that a good benchmark? Can I actually perform it better? I could see there are ways that I could do this better and then just implement that and integrate it into my company so that I could push it forward. And so there was sort of like a springboard where I was able to jump on it And all of a sudden, there were so many things that I knew how to do, or someone I could reach out to and just ask simple questions like,
Right.
"What does gross margin mean?" I have no idea what, like things as simple as that.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I knew what net profit was, but I knew almost nothing else.
That's really great. I mean, what David and Matt created is pretty awesome. So shout out to both of those guys because you're not the first to kind of talk about some of the real success that they helped. Not only you know build your business, but really help you take the next step in your life as well, which is really awesome based on the business. So that's really great. How do you think being a technician and going through, the different steps help shape your vision when you ultimately became a business owner? Did you kind of bring some of the things that while you're sitting there going, I would do this different, or I would do that differently, and how that ultimately came to play in your own business?
I think it allowed me to communicate more effectively with technicians and management. I think some people overcorrect and now they want to be um, the owner that loves technicians and that coddles technicians and things like that. I love technicians and I love installers. I was both of those things. Um, but I don't believe that any of them need to, like I guess what I'm trying to say is it allowed me to communicate and understand their belief system, understand their sort of internal culture, understand even some of their limiting beliefs, discuss different kind of pricing and really get the point across of what we were trying to accomplish. I was able to paint a much clearer vision for them so that they could see one, we weren't necessarily trying to just make all the money in the world. That was never the case. And we weren't necessarily just trying to go out and give everything away. It was really a discussion on why we're here, what we need to do that, what people really want to experience, why it's important to be organized, why it's important to deliver world-class service and, serve clients and how that doing all of that would create a great outcome.
Yeah,
And so being a technician and installer, I there were times where I actually went out, even after having everything structured and organized, be able to get out in the field and actually help demo air conditioning equipment because we started to grow so rapidly that even though I was creating massive budgets and fast growing budgets, they almost weren't enough.
interesting.
So being able to get out there and help guys, which they automatically saw as like, look, this is the owner of the company and he's out here, with us until midnight,
Yeah,
helping them get
that's
through it.
great. No, you build that credibility and that trust, and people go beyond it. It's funny because you say, we're growing so fast, and many people who are listening would be like, "Well, that's a good problem to have." And in theory, it
Yeah.
is, but it also comes with, growth too fast can also be a challenge at times because you lose some of the alignment, you lose some of the culture, you lose some of be able to service the client in a way that is really important to all business be successful. I know to you as well. It's growth is good. Let's not confuse that, but it also can be a challenge as well. But it sounds like you use that opportunity to actually build more credibility both with your customers and your team by getting out in the field and doing that as well. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. It worked out well.
So you built this company up, fast growing. You had a successful exit. You sold the business. I don't know how much time you took off, but you relatively quickly went into a kind of a periphery home service field, starting Good Golly Garage Doors. Love to understand. First off, I am curious, how much time did you take off to get your kind of clear your mind, and then why garage doors? Why did you think that was the next best step for you in your journey?
So I didn't take much time off. I guess maybe actively I took off about a year. But I was also still, working on some planning, researching, talked to a few garage door guys. I was really looking at should I do restoration, garage doors, roofing, kind of all the common things that a lot of tradespeople get into. Looking at the business models, looking at the margins, and I ended up deciding on garage doors because the margins were very similar to what I was used to. Now I know that there's a lot of roofing companies out there that don't do a lot of insurance work, and there's even some restoration companies that don't do a lot of insurance work. But I've never been involved with any type of insurance work. I'm not really
Yeah,
one that's great with having a big AR and
yeah,
trying to collect on these and negotiating with insurance companies and things like that. I am really good. And when I say I'm good, it's my team ends up being really good at communicating with clients at their home, delivering really great service, differentiating ourselves from competition, and, really just providing great value to a customer. And so I talked to some different garage door guys, and some of them. Well, I mean, there's some garage door guys out there that are absolutely amazing. Like all of the ones that everyone knows about, of course, which would be like Tommy Mello, and then there's these other groups like Guild Garage Group and stuff like that. They're amazing groups. Um, but I talked to a lot of mid tier people, and I could see the opportunity there, and it just made a lot of sense to me. And so I just kind of honed in on garage doors, and then just worked through the different licensing requirements and stuff like that. And it just seemed to make a lot of sense to me.
And this is yours. It's not a franchise, or it's this you created this from scratch.
Yeah, it's kind of a funny model. It looks a lot like a franchise, but it's not. It even looks a little bit like PE, but it's not. It's all from scratch. Originally, the concept was I'm going to just open up a garage door company in Las Vegas and just run it similar to my HVAC and plumbing company and just grow it out for 5 years and sell it. And my wife, she has some different health issues. And right around the same time I was getting ready to start Good Golly in Las Vegas, I found that I couldn't be there present all the time in the way that I hold myself accountable to. I have very high standards for management, and I was taking on the role of a manager. And so just because it's me doesn't mean I don't have high standards. And I started to look at that and say, well, I'm not going to be able to operate this in the way that I would see fit. And so a new concept started to come from that, which was to go national, which sounds like it'd be even more of a challenge. Uh, but but it's actually
Local's too hard. Let's go bigger, right?
yeah, let's create 25 locations in the next 18 months from scratch. And I have a really good reputation in the home service industry. Um, a lot of people know me. I'm pretty low key. I don't, I'm kind of a don't talk about it, be about it type person. I really like to do the work. I like to use fundamentals. I'm not super flashy. I don't need a lot of fancy things. And I think that a lot of people recognize that. And I know a lot of other people in the industry that have really good reputations or that are very similar in that way. And so I just started talking to people, and a lot of people were interested in either creating a second business because maybe their first business is a legacy business, or, getting back into the game because maybe they had sold their business and now they're interested in finding a new sense of purpose. And so it became really great, where I created this model. Um, to where now, like we're opening up new locations even in January. And, we do expect to add on probably another 15 to 20 locations within the next 18 months or so.
That's crazy. So you have 6 locations right now? Is that what you are?
Yeah, 6 locations and then two likely coming in January, one for sure, but maybe one more. We're in November now, so about 2 months.
So to open 6 locations so fast from launch, how did you scale while keeping some of the things that are important to you in terms of service and culture and, treating both your technicians and your customers in a certain way? Because it's hard. That's a very difficult thing to do. So I'd love to hear how you've been so successful doing that so far.
So each of my partners are, to me, extremely special people, just like anyone that you'd ever meet that runs a successful home service business. There's a grind to it. And especially as a startup, there's a real grind to it. Um, they actually care about what they're doing. And when you think about scalability, if you have 6 people that are running 6 locations and they're all small business and they're very effective managers that might be accustomed to managing a $5 to $20 million business, if you're looking at managing one technician and maybe one call taker, that's not a huge ask. It's fairly easy. I think it's very straightforward. And so
Interesting.
now they're able, and we're all aligned. Like every location is different because each one is independently owned and operated. They're all their own separate LLCs. They're all owned by a holding
Interesting.
company, but they're all separate. And they can run it however they want to run it, but they all pretty much run it in the same way using fundamentals. We all understand what numbers we're trying to achieve. We all know that every phone call that comes in is very important. We know that every appointment that we have is very important. Important. Every 5-star review we get is important. And so if it were me trying to run 6 locations at once, that could never work out. Or it could, but I'd go crazy. But when you have, one person who's the operating partner in a location, well, they can do much better than I probably can in a lot of different points of that business.
It's interesting. And because it sounds like these are people that have been successful historically, people that are in your general network. As you build this out, I know it's early. Are you taking best practices from each of those locations and kind of begin to kind of disseminate that information and that knowledge across the overall ecosystem? Even though there's several businesses, everybody wants to do the best they can, and you own, I assume, a piece of all of it. So there's benefits to you to do that as well. How are you managing that, or is that part of the future vision of the business as well?
Yeah, we have no outside investors. I'm basically the 100% investor in the whole organization, and we have strategic suggestions, which are kind of like strategic standards, but no one has to do anything in the way that I say or anyone else is doing. But they're typically recommended and we discuss them. And I like having really great conversations with people and usually finding alignment. And so since they're also for the most part, very good operators, people that have been successful in the past, even if they have a different way, I can usually align to that. And so it doesn't have to be my way because I reckon, it's funny. I was talking to so we have a holding company team. We have a national service director, a CMO, a CTO, a lot of different,
And you
elements.
built it out yourself. You just funded that organization and built it. That's amazing. That's awesome.
Yeah. And so I was talking to my national service director this morning and he was talking about a location in Oklahoma where the guys are still like they're in a locker room, right? Like these guys are like completely inappropriate, completely crazy. Their group chat seems almost illegal and an HR nightmare, versus like maybe maybe another location in another place that's very polished, very calm, very likable, very whatever. And the outcome is the exact same thing. They both generate the same amount of revenue. They both probably get about the same number of 5-star reviews. And so what I'm saying is best practices are great. And sure, we're all shooting for roughly the same margin. We do have a national price book that is adjustable depending on the market and things like that. But I don't need them to align with me. Ultimately, I'm looking to align with them and we're looking to align with each other, right? So I want to fully compromise so that they're extremely happy and confident in what they're doing. And I can see the light in what they're doing.
That's awesome. You know, this is a different model, but what are some of the things as we kind of want to love more about? You talked about some of the things that part of your culture, things you've done historically. What are some of those things you've taken from the last business you started to this business, or even taken that accentuated? What are some of the key things you're like, this was really critical, even though I have partners, at least for the organization that I run, this is going to be critical for us as well.
Yeah, I guess there's a couple things there. One is a strong sense of being organized, having a very organized organization. Um, my former vision statement was to be the most organized and forward thinking company in the industry. And I leaned
Love
on
that.
that a lot. And as we were building things out, a lot of people have mission statements and vision statements, and maybe in smaller corporations, it's not looked at as much. For me, it's looked at all the time. And I used to say, look, no one's going to want to work here if we don't know what we're doing, right? We need to be organized and, we need people to know that we're organized so that they can also stay organized. That's a real big part of it. If there's a process, if there's something that's reoccurring, then we have to create a process for it. Then we have to figure out how we can roll that process out and then how we can consistently perform that process. Right. So being very process driven was very important in my last company. And it is for this one as well. Even though each location operates differently, at least from the holding company side, like onboarding, for instance, where there's 25 different items that you need in order to start up a new business, which would be things like creating a brand, a logo, website, employment benefits, insurance, marketing plan, all of these different things. And the list is never ending. How do we get that delivered to them in a way that creates no friction at all? Right. So that's being organized and being able to deliver. And then my thing is doing everything with a sense of urgency as if my life depends on it. If it can be
Oh,
done today, it's going to get done today. Even if it's at the end of the night, I'm going to get it done today. And that's the way that I do it. It doesn't necessarily inspire everyone to do it in that exact way, but they do understand that, hey, time is of the essence and
yeah.
we want to get things done. Like, let's get it done.
It's really, yeah, I love when you said that, the way you do it. what you do, and you know this, it does drip down to the organization, right? From an organization to getting back, incredibly prompt and urgent things. When people see you acting like that, not everyone's going to act in the same exact manner, but you better believe if you don't do that, they're not doing it at all, right? So I mean, you've seen this running two successful businesses. It is so critical that the focus and energy you start with will ultimately, be what the rest of the organization sees and the rest of the organization does. So you started good golly. Thing is, you have six, sounds like you're gonna have eight soon. You're gonna open up another 15 to 20 over the next 18 months. Have you set up like goals, objectives, milestones? Like where do you want to take this business?
Well, it'll end up going where it goes, but we do have, it's, I guess I expect that we'll have some choices to make within the next 5 years on what to do with the organization overall. But it is structured in a way that it should be a very good business. It should be scalable. I think there's a lot of meat on the bone there's going to be a lot of meat on the bone still left. We don't necessarily have a ton of shared services. I feel that um, it's going to look really good if we decide to exit out of it. And I think that if we were to decide to stay with it, I think it's just as good.
That's great.
It's gonna depend on the partners. Ultimately, I have all the drag along rights to do whatever I want. But I think that it ends up being, the people that I'm partnered with, I look at them as real partners. A
Yeah.
lot of them I have real relationships with. And even just since it started back in April, I've changed the operating agreement with no prodding from any partners, but changed the operating agreement to um, give the partners more of an advantage as we go. I was
Interesting.
just thinking about it. I had a lot of things built into the operating agreement that were all sort of like carrots, and ways to get people to improve their, I don't know, like the way that they operated. And I thought about that and I said, look, these are all real operators. They're real partners. They're friends. And I don't think that I need to dangle a carrot in front of anyone that's giving it their 100% effort every single day to end up getting a larger piece of the pie. I'm just going to give them a larger piece of the pie. And there were already people in it. And I said, hey, if you guys want to sign this, this is what it is. And of course, everyone was excited to sign it. They kind of all
You mean
scratched their
you
head.
mean you're not taking away, you're giving more? That never happens, but, that's great.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well,
Yeah.
that's gonna
So,
build, as you know, long-term, trust and, the partnership will be even stronger. That's awesome. So, you've built a successful company. You didn't do that by, not working incredibly hard. You went out and started another company that's expanding, nationally really quick. How do you balance that company growth, the focus, with also your personal growth and your personal development and the things that are important to you?
yeah, I have a long day and I enjoy every minute of it. I'm up every day at about 4 a.m. Up every single day at 4 a.m. I have a little morning routine that I hit, and then I work out pretty much every day. So I spend about an hour working out. I eat very healthy, so I'm kind of a high protein, low carb. Nothing like keto or carnivore or anything like that. But just trying to maintain health and focus on what I do. I have 4 kids and an amazing wife, and I spend a lot of time with them. I pretty much cook every meal.
That's
Like
amazing.
I like to cook. I like to spend time with them. I do, however, while I'm cooking, I am checking emails and sending back messages. And, while I'm working out, I'm shooting off messages and sometimes doing like some FaceTime meetings while I'm working out. Um, you know, uh, but I have to be able to do everything that I can. Like today's Monday, but on Saturday, so I spent the whole weekend in LA, flew out there on Friday, went and visited a large rehab center in LA and talked to entrepreneurs in training. So convicted people that are convicted that do want to make a change in their previous life and even their present life to become better people. And just spent the whole day on Saturday talking with them about what it takes to be an entrepreneur, listen to their business plans, gave them some pointers on their resumes and gave them some marketing plans. They want to do word of mouth, but it's like, well, does anyone even know you? How are you going to get word of mouth? So we started talking about real things that they could do because if they're going to improve their lives and be great people, then I want to help them have an opportunity. So it's the same thing, just really my personal growth and the things that I do on a personal level, they are all for my family. They're for my kids, they're for my wife, and for the betterment of others. Being philanthropic is an important thing for me. Teaching the kids how to be philanthropic, teaching my children how to have some financial understanding. Even my 8-year-old, she invests every single week in the stock market, and things like that. So she's like learning how to, do things like what are kids into? Like the different games she invests in and Sephora and things like that that she knows about.
That's really cool.
But that's part of my personal development. And of course, reading and listening to podcasts and things like that are all important. But it's all day. It's like every day, all day. That's what I do.
You're a very disciplined, person. I can see that just from our conversation, and having your kids. I have 3 kids also. Watch what you do every day. Any of your kids interested in joining you in business at some point, or are they a little younger still?
Well, I have a 21-year-old and an 18-year-old, and they're both kind of business minded themselves. The one of them goes to UNLV, the other one goes to University of Hawaii. My freshman son just moved to Hawaii. Lucky for him, right? And
Exactly.
but my son called me up yesterday, and he's like, "Hey, Dad, I've been watching these videos and doing some research. What do you think of day trading?" And I was like, "I don't really advise day trading, but let's talk when you come in for Thanksgiving. Let's sit down and, let's work on like some different long-term investment strategies and looking at that kind of stuff. So maybe more in that side. Maybe that's something that's more in his wheelhouse, but they know I'm an entrepreneur. They both have entrepreneurial ideas. My older son wanted to create like almost like a film studio. And I don't know how AI will affect that. It's something that we talk about. And then my younger son, he's an athlete. So he wants to talk about like rehabbing. He's going into, I think he's going to get his doctorate and become like, I don't know, like a sports therapist,
Yeah,
right? So he
yeah.
could still stay involved in sports and, help athletes, and things like that. And maybe start up some kind of training facility is something that he's like in his mind now. He's 18, so he may change that, moving forward, but that's where he's at now.
And a few years in Hawaii, who knows what he's going to be thinking at that point, right? That's great.
Fishing every weekend.
You and me both. I look at my 17-year-old son. I'm like, when I come back, I want to be you. That's you. You got a good life, kid. It's kind of fun. You touched on AI, which is people talk about home services specifically as an area, which again, I don't think is ever going to be changed. Actually, I'm curious on your view of how AI is going to, be with. It's not going to replace people are going to be in the field doing this stuff, but how are you seeing AI making your organizations better or impacting the overall kind of home service space?
I think there's a ton of efficiencies gained by AI, but and I could be wrong. I use AI every day, just like everyone else nowadays, for little tasks and things like that. But I think that for one, writing operating agreements, writing or at least rough drafts of operating agreements, employment agreements, creating processes and systems, and most tradespeople like myself, we're not the best at grammar or punctuation and writing up nice documents, right? So that helps out tremendously. That's one thing. Call answering services, I think, have a place right now. When it comes to overflow and overnight calls, I think there's a good value there. I don't feel that it replaces the human interaction. I do believe that customer service is it's an element of human interaction. I want to be able to, like, I guess AI is getting better and maybe now they can show a little empathy. Maybe they can show a sense of urgency, but they're not quite there yet. Maybe one day they will be. I think on the marketing side, it can, if there's like these agents that are able to effectively do these SEO projects for us, where we can just literally say, okay, go ahead and scan our website and the deficiencies of the website, and I perform those tasks to be able to get those things done. That'll set different companies apart. And I'm sure there's some certain companies out there that are extremely sophisticated that might be doing that already. Um, so I think that other than delivering the actual service, although who knows, maybe someday, really, maybe someday, a robot will actually be able to replace the toilet. That's highly likely that someday that will happen. Who knows?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but I personally still like humans, and I like interacting with humans, and I feel that humans still like to interact with humans.
I agree.
And
I
so I
agree.
think the value that's created by that is, would a person rather pay $100 less for a toilet by using a robot? Maybe, but until that time comes, I think that all we can really do, there's so many projections and so many people looking at things. I think that is there a way to prepare? I'm not sure if there's a way to prepare, or we just still focus on our business and just keep pushing our business in the right direction as well as we possibly can.
Yeah, I mean, we'll continue to evolve and we'll adjust with that evolution, like, like anyone else. I wanted to go back to something, you were talking about your day. You wake up at 4:30, work out every day. You have a really, really, really strong organization and kind of focus. A lot of people listening might be like, wow, that's amazing. He's obviously incredibly successful. How do you avoid burnout? How do you avoid burnout with that kind of intensity? And by the way, me talking to you, you seem incredibly calm. You seem like you got a really good, way about you in terms of managing all this in a not in a frantic way, not in a, what's going on, but very, very thoughtfully, very, focused. Uh, but a lot of people may hear that and be like, I'd be burnt out if I was doing that every day. But it doesn't seem to be about. It seems that you have a good flow with that.
So, they say that, I guess if you like love what you do, then you'll never work a day in your life or something like
Yeah,
that, right? And
yeah, yeah.
I love what I do. I love it.
I love that.
I love talking with team members. I love talking to management. I love talking to my partners. I love talking to CSRs. I love talking to everybody. I like to interact with the people that I work with, and I like to help guide, you know, um, the strategies that we have. The strategies that we have are very sound. They're very fundamental, and I enjoy that. Um, I have good friends and, good people that I network with, and those people always keep me grounded. Very successful people that I know that have done, much more amazing things than I have. And so I'm always inspired by that as well. I enjoy talking to investors, even though I don't need investors. I just enjoy hearing what they have to say. I
Yeah,
enjoy talking to people that are professional investors, people that are professional tradespeople, people that are professional managers. My workout is something that I need. I'm 50. So as a 50-year-old person, you want to take care of yourself and have that
yeah.
energy. My workouts are, I feel they're extreme. They're extreme to me. They might not be extreme to like a 25-year-old athlete, right? But to me, I put it in every single day. I'm here to get it done. I'm here to, make it happen every single day. And I enjoy that. And whether it's because of, I don't know, it could even be the dopamine rush that you get just from, checking boxes all day. I
Yeah,
enjoy it anyways. Regardless, I enjoy it. Um, just I'm not a naturally organized person. And somehow my day just really does flow together. When I say I'm not naturally organized, I do expect my organization to be. And I align to that and I create strategies for that. Somehow my day just ends up falling into place to where it works out great every single day,
that's great.
no matter what I do. And I don't drink a lot. Like I would say I probably have a drink with friends probably 3 to 4 times a month, which is more than somebody that doesn't drink at all. But I mean,
Right.
I'm not a person that drinks every day.
Yeah.
I'm very conscious of like my sugar intake, and I don't have crashes and I don't take naps and I don't need any of that. And I like to snuggle with my youngest daughter and hang out and just,
Love that.
talk about weird things, and at the same time, I love my wife. I love talking to her. She's great. I'm not just saying that because she'll see the podcast, like she knows it, like she knows it,
By the way,
like,
either way, it's good to say, so that's fantastic. By the way,
yeah.
I
So
couldn't agree. The people don't. I'm also in similar age. I'm a few years older than you are, but I have a very similar daily workout schedule, and it's not. I'm not competing for anything. I need it for my own mind, for my own self to stay physically active, mentally and physically, because then I can deal with the rest of the pressures of the day. Right? It's the old thing. If you take care of yourself, then you can take care of others. Just like you, that's my time where that's my time, and I may shoot an email or a text, but it's still my time, right? And no one's bothering me that, and I think creating that thing while you're building a business, because I've started 5 businesses. I will tell you the first 1 or 2, I lost myself in the business. I was burning in both ends, young kids, and I did have investors. I was, and I lost the things that were important to me as I've aged and got a little smarter, I realized taking care of myself is absolutely critical to taking care of everybody else because just like you, a lot of people depend on me and they depend on you. And me being in good health and a good mind is absolutely critical. So it's really awesome that you've kind of found that groove within your own self and it clearly is working. So to kind of end, I got a couple questions for future advice for future underdogs or final advice for future underdogs. So the first is, we talked about this a little bit, but we could maybe bring it all together from a succinct standpoint. Some of the biggest lessons you've learned through both starting and scaling your businesses, like just a couple, top two that kind of pop out, which will be different from just advice in general for aspiring entrepreneurs. So this is more specifically to your businesses you started.
I believe that you shouldn't chase money. You know, everyone's kind of heard that. Don't chase money. I want to create a business that is operationally sound, that's there to serve, in the case of a home service business, it's a service business and we're there to serve people. We're not there to take all of their money. Serve people. That's what they want. That's what they need. Provide really great repairs and really great installation options that people will like. And, the outcome is going to be you got paid, but that shouldn't be the thing that you're really concerned with. I'm really concerned with taking care of people. If I'm taking care of people, then the outcome's going to be great, right? So that's one thing. Um, I think really defining who you are and what you're trying to accomplish. What is your sense of purpose? And maybe asking yourself those things will really help drive your behavior. I know what I'm here for. It's to, create a legacy for my kids, for my wife. I think for a long time it was really for myself, my own feeding my own ego and, the things that I wanted to accomplish. It's not so much that anymore. It really is to create a great situation for my family. I grew up just like a lot of people, I grew up poor. I didn't grow up with any money, and, I obviously they're not going to grow up that way, but I still want them to understand it and, educate them on what it's like to be like a high net worth kid, and teach them the right way. Right.
Yeah.
Um, and then not to, I don't want to downplay how much grind it takes. Like you and I were just talking about taking care of ourselves and doing all these things. But just like you said, and just like I could say in the beginning, I didn't take care of myself at all. There is some grind that's required and some level of focus and high level of focus to creating something that is special. You're not going to
Yeah.
create something special by not doing something special, in my
Yeah.
mind. Again, there's that
Agree.
one out of billion person that did it by doing nothing, but that's good for them. But for me, yeah, that's not a strategy, right? In my mind, it's like, okay, let me learn about this and now let me go do it every single waking moment and do it, to the maximum potential that I can while learning more, getting better, and then now having a higher maximum, and just continue doing that. I don't want to take my foot off the gas at all. Of course, I'm not trying to crash, so I'm not being reckless. Everything is intentional, but we're going to get these things done all day long, right? And so, you know, I don't expect anything to come easy. I expect to work for all of it. And I think any young person or any entrepreneur shouldn't complain about that. It's a great opportunity. We don't have to do this. We get to do this. And people that are setting budgets, I talked to people in the past and, they're stressed out about their budget. And I think it's great that they're stressed out because I would be stressed out too. And that's all self, especially if you're the owner of the company and you're the only principal in the company, then well, yeah, that's self-inflicted and you don't have to actually create that budget because it's your company anyways, and you're successful.
Yeah.
But driving towards that is what helps us be able to say, "Hey, we are successful." So if we're going to be successful, let's create that goal and let's get there, right? So
That's
there's a
great.
grind to it.
It's a total. It's yeah. It's there's it. It's not. It's never easy. Like again, it's easy to look at you and your success, and people do, I'm sure, and they forget the 25 years of what it took to get to where you are. Right. It's looking back's a lot easier. Last question. So that aspiring entrepreneur is whether that's in some service industry, could be HVAC, could be in garages, could be in anything. They're thinking of going into a business. What would you say to that person? They're a little scared. They've been in the trades. They understand the basic work. What would you say to that person about maybe take that leap?
I would say, a good thing to do. It isn't what I did, but I think that if I had the opportunity to do it over again, I believe finding a mentor is an important thing. Getting a good business coach is a really good thing. There are only so many fundamentals that you need to focus on and to get good at in order to create a decent business and maybe build on that. So your marketing, your operations, um, maybe your business framework. There's certain elements that you have to get good at, and none of those, you get none of that experience from being a technician. You get none of that experience from making pizzas. You get none of that experience from sort of doing the work, right? And it was like I was saying when I was at that rehab place, as an example, one person wanted, he wanted to create a catering business. And I said, okay, well, what kind of food do you want to make? And he's like, oh, I can make everything. I said, well, what kind of food do you make really well that you love making? He said, well, Mexican food. My grandmother, and my mother taught me how to make really great food. And I said, does it actually taste good? Are you really good at cooking? He's like, yeah, I'm really good at it. I said, okay, I mean, there's your start. There's your, there's your offering to people. They can see I'm a guy that my grandmother and my mother taught me how to make this amazing food, and it tastes amazing. And I said, you get out there and I said, you want to market by word of mouth, but no one knows who you are. Why don't you just go to a party, cook the food there for free and let them know if the food is good, please just let me video, let me video you, throw it on Instagram and really post it out there, and great people having a great time eating good food. Right. So
Love
that
that.
right there was maybe something that was a game changer. In my mind, it was a game changer because otherwise it's like, yeah, I'm just going to make tacos and I guess make some money but that's not how it
Exactly.
works.
Exactly. That's great. Well, Jason, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you taking the time. You have a very disciplined scheduled days, so I appreciate you carving out some time for me today. And I really not only enjoyed it, but inspired by a lot of your growth, a lot of things that you've learned that you've passed along to, I'm sure, not just people on this podcast, but to other people in your organization and people you come in contact with on a daily basis, both from philanthropy standpoint and just from an engagement standpoint. So, Jason, thanks again. I really appreciate it. Thank you for joining me on this episode. I'd like to invite you to subscribe to Business Underdog on your favorite podcast platform. By subscribing, you'll never miss an episode and you'll be the first to hear these incredible stories. Please be sure to follow us on social and visit our website at businessunderdog.com for episode updates, resources, and more. And thank you for listening today. Until next time, stay inspired, keep pushing forward, and embrace your inner underdog.